Wish I knew how to read. Hey everyone, Andrew here from Beta64. I'm here to talk to you today about Super Mario Galaxy, a Mario adventure of cosmic proportions. So says the box. But you know what I say as cosmic proportions? The unused stuff in Super Mario Galaxy. There is so much info in this game. Like, did you know Lumas were originally cosmic toads? And did you know that cosmic toads may have originally been Power Star people like Eldstar from Mario Party 5? There's just so many things about this game that it took me, I kid you not, an entire year to make this video. So let's not delay any further. Let's talk about the development of Super Mario Galaxy. Super Mario Galaxy began from very humble beginnings. A tech demo shown off at Space World 2000, which I think we've seen probably 700 times in Beta64 history. It's Super Mario 128. It was designed in order to showcase the power of the upcoming Nintendo GameCube by featuring 128 Marios all running around on an ever-changing platform while doing various tasks like throwing boxes, uncovering Marios, and then rolling those said Marios off the edge of the world to their death. But of course, Mario Galaxy wasn't the only game that originated from this tech demo. Different developers throughout the years took their own bits and pieces of it for their own games, like Pikmin, which was inspired by having over 100 different characters on screen at once, each completing their own set tasks. But what did Galaxy use? Well, allegedly, this demo had something called sphere walking, where the platform would turn into a giant ball and the Marios would walk all the way around it, much like a planet, which is much like Super Mario Galaxy. But I will say, I haven't seen any video of this sphere walking or any reputable articles talking about it at the time. I've only found it mentioned on Wikipedia with no source and game FAQs. After digging into this deeper, because it just didn't seem right, it seems people were drawing this conclusion from an Iwata Ask with Koizumi, lead designer of Mario Galaxy and director of the Mario 128 demo. In it he says, "I kept thinking of ways of somehow turning that system used in Mario 128 into a product. However, I had always thought that realizing this would be close to impossible. In Mario 128, the platform was built in the shape of a flying saucer. But in order to change the platform into a spherical shape where Mario could freely roam around, it would require a high level of technical expertise." Now, to me, what this interview seems to be saying is that there were no completely spherical platforms in Mario 128. Instead, the UFO-like platform itself gave Koizumi the idea of making spherical platforms. But it wasn't in the demo because the technology required seemed to be impossible at the time. Now, if you do know of a reputable article, or even better, a video showing spherical platforms in Super Mario 128, I'd love to see it. Send it to me on Twitter, at Beta64Official, and I'll check it out. As of right now, though, I haven't been able to really find anything, so I'm gonna have to just put it as a maybe myth.
Hey y'all!
Great, Scott, what are you doing here?
I'm here for the Super Mario 128 Development Hell recap. Isn't that what this is?
I mean, yeah, technically, actually. Do you know much about the tech demo?
I've been waiting for this day for years. Time to finally let my Super Mario 128 Development Hell trivia freak flag fly.
Yeah, okay, cool. So tell us about the tech demo. What happened to it after it was shown?
Alright, so first things first, when we look at Mario 128, it's obvious it was just a tech demo and wasn't intended to be made into a full-blown game with 128 Marios. But the next year at Space World 2001, when Super Mario Sunshine was revealed, some people assumed that Sunshine was Super Mario 128, which, not quite sure why, besides it having Mario in it, it looks and functions nothing alike. It's kinda like when the tech demo for a new Zelda on the GameCube was shown, and when people saw Wind Waker, they assumed they were the same game.
Yeah, heck, even I thought that. And honestly, I can't really blame people for thinking that Super Mario 128 was going to be a full game, because Miyamoto didn't tell them it wasn't going to be. In fact, in an interview, Miyamoto said that Sunshine and Super Mario 128 were completely separate projects. Makes sense. But Mario 128, he said, was going to be seen later on, except it wasn't. It was never seen again.
Yeah, from this on, this soon-to-be game was only vaguely mentioned by Nintendo staff every once in a while. In 2002, Miyamoto mentioned the game to Playboy magazine for some reason, saying it was still in development. But despite hopes being up for a reveal at E3 2003, it wasn't revealed. That same year, George Harrison, a worker at Nintendo, teased that Mario 128 might not even be on the GameCube. And in 2004, Miyamoto once again confirmed it was still being developed, but it didn't appear at E3 2004 either.
And then GameSpy came into the picture and asked Miyamoto what the heck was going on. At that point, he started to be a bit more descriptive, saying that it was being experimented on multiple systems, like the GameCube and DS. This was the first hint showing that Mario 128 wasn't really a game anymore, but instead was being used to create other projects. Though as far as what was going on behind the scenes, Miyamoto said that he really didn't know all that much since he was only a director. But he did say that once he saw the results of the programmers' experiments, final decisions would start being made.
Reggie had some more stuff to say about it too. Back in early 2005, he was vice president of marketing at Nintendo of America, and he went on record saying that yes, Super Mario 128 would appear at E3 2005, likely as a video trailer.
Let me guess, nothing was shown.
Nope. At E3, Reggie was interviewed by GameSpot, who asked him why it wasn't there, to which he simply responded that he can only show what Miyamoto gives him to show. And that's when the reporter asked something everybody was thinking at the time. Does it even exist?
I mean, yeah, it'd been 3 years since it was last shown, and it seemed like Nintendo was teasing us at this point. But Reggie responded saying that he had seen bits and pieces of it, so that meant it had to exist, right? But come on, Nintendo, you gotta give us something. Anything.
And Miyamoto finally gave us something towards the end of 2005, like how the game had been moved from the GameCube to the Revolution, the codename for Wii at the time. And in September of that same year, he finally gave us some of the first ever concrete details. In an interview on a Japanese radio station, he revealed Mario would have a new character helping him through the game, and that the game itself wouldn't be called Super Mario 128, but instead have an entirely different name, and that the Wii had been built essentially around the game itself. And that's the last we ever heard about that tech demo.
Dang, Scott, you know a lot of insane details off the top of your head. How do you know so much?
My dad works for Nintendo.
Honestly, I can believe that. So what now, man?
Well, I don't know about you, but I feel an existential crisis coming on. Now that my purpose in life, being Mario 128 trivia, has been fulfilled, I have nothing left to aspire for.
Cool, talk to you later, man. So that was the development of Super Mario 128, and the thing we should realize is that Super Mario 128 and Super Mario Galaxy go hand in hand. Their development stories are the same. When Miyamoto stopped talking about Super Mario 128, that's when Super Mario Galaxy was revealed for the first time. So it's not like we ever lost Super Mario 128, it evolved into Super Mario Galaxy. Now that we've looked at what the public saw during this evolution in Galaxy, let's take a look at what actually happened behind the scenes. As you remember, after Super Mario 128 was shown off, Koizumi wanted to make a game using spherical platforms, but was afraid that on a technical level, it wouldn't be possible to pull off on the hardware. There was just too many unknowns, and it would take a lot of experimenting before a tech demo could be made, let alone a full game. So the idea went on hold, at least until late 2004. That was when Nintendo EAD Tokyo had just finished developing Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, and Miyamoto suggested that the team's next project be a full-scale, new Mario game. And with that, he also pushed the team into using that spherical platform idea that Koizumi had mentioned to him years ago. But just because Miyamoto gave them the go-ahead didn't mean that the entire team just suddenly became convinced of the idea. Koichi Hayashida, co-designer of Galaxy, was very skeptical of including these spherical platforms in a jumping platform-based game. In fact, he went as far as to say it would be a bad match. Heck, even Takao Shimizu, Galaxy's co-producer who appears right below Miyamoto in the end credits, thought this project would be impossible to produce from a technical standpoint, and he would know, being one of the team's programmers. Even after the project was approved, he still felt, as he said, a sense of danger when beginning Galaxy's development. But impossible or not, the team got to work creating a prototype physics engine specifically designed for spherical platforms. 3 months later, they got it done, surprisingly, and now needed a way to justify Mario running around onto a sphere. That's about the time they came up with the idea of making spheres planets. And from that point on, the team kept in close contact with Miyamoto for advice on how to design the game, as they came up with these various new ideas. One of these new ideas was Mario's new spin attack, which came out of necessity early in development. As the team began adding enemies to the game, it became increasingly obvious that Mario's signature stomping attack would be way harder to pull off on a sphere. To solve this problem, Shimizu started researching how people played 3D games and found that the most basic thing everyone does is run. So why stop them to jump? And thusly, the spin attack was born. Now, it is important to note that during this time, the Wii wasn't even being developed, so all of this was designed with the GameCube in mind. Instead of swinging the Wii remote to perform a spin attack, originally, you would instead spin the analog stick on the GameCube controller, kind of like how you do a spin jump in Sunshine. But even after the Wii Remote and Nunchuck were conceived, the spin attack was still set to be activated by spinning the Nunchuck's control stick. It wasn't until the Wii's development team confirmed that the Wii Remote would have a built-in motion sensor that the team finally decided to make the swinging Wii Remote the activation for Mario's spin attack. During this early time in development, the team had a certain vision of the game they wanted to create. They wanted Galaxy to be enjoyed by anyone, of any age, at any skill level, and Iwata agreed. He wanted to make the game's fun factor, as he put it, be the main focus, which would give the player a well-needed sense of accomplishment. Because I don't know about you, but I base my self-worth entirely on what video games I've beaten recently. I'm actually feeling pretty good right now because I beat one of my more difficult games recently, a Shake the Wii Remote to Win. In reality, what Iwata really wanted to do was to stop people from quitting their games halfway. He noticed in the past that there was an increasing number of people just giving up on games midway through, and he wanted Galaxy to be that one game that would keep that from happening. The development team took note of this and did a couple things in response. One, they added the ability for a second player to grab a Wii Remote and help the first player throughout their adventure. And two, they made the game itself easier. Early in development, they designed Galaxy so that players could get into the game and play most of it without much difficulty. And that's about the time Miyamoto stopped in and was like, no, we're not making a challengeless Mario game. To help fix this difficulty problem, or lack thereof, Koizumi suggested that Mario's life meter be decreased from the original 8, as it has been in Mario 64 and Sunshine, and instead have it at a max of 3. To keep things balanced though, he also suggested that there be more 1-up mushrooms in the levels, as well as checkpoints to keep players from having to restart the level from the beginning if they died. Now, with all of that added in, there was no way people would quit halfway. I quit halfway. But I did eventually beat it. 10 years later. Now, before we go to E3 2006, where Galaxy's first playable demo was put on the show floor, the press kits released around that time have some actual interesting info in them, and of course we gotta take a look at that. Like how Rosalina was originally called Rosetta, which is based off a complex type of orbit that I don't understand, so here's a picture of it. This is a Rosetta, and this is also a Rosetta, or at least an early design of her, resembling more a Peach than her final design. But let's get back to the press kit, because we've got some early UI here, which shows that despite having 19 Power Stars and 3 Grand Stars, and no Green Stars, whoever played this was still able to reach the trial galaxies, even though they needed Green Stars. It's showtime. E3 2006 is here, and Nintendo, like an elementary school student, brought Super Mario Galaxy as their show and tell, featuring a different logo from what we saw in the final game. During the show, there was quite a bit of off-screen footage that attendees recorded, which show off different parts of this single demo that's both unique and an early good at Galaxy. There are a huge amount of changes in this, so as with previous videos, the Beta Compare Club took great care finding them all. You can check out those differences at club.beta64.tv, but for now, here's some of the most interesting changes that can be found in the E3 2006 demo. First, at the beginning of the demo, Mario is shown floating in a space bubble waiting for the player to pop it with their definitely different Wii Remote cursor. And once the player pops the bubble, he falls into Star World, and onto a planet that's completely different than anything in Galaxy. It's complete with ring bells, cosmic toads with stars on their heads, and a bunch of eggs, meaning that was originally probably a part of Good Egg Galaxy. Once you get up to the top of the summit, use the star boost, and hop onto these 2 small moons, you'll reach an area that looks way more familiar. It's the first planet in the final version of Good Egg Galaxy, but still got a lot of changes, like a completely different house and surrounding planetary. Mario landing on this planet is also different, or rather the animation doesn't exist. After landing, he just keeps walking like it's nothing. Now here's something that caught me off guard while I was watching the E3 footage. Check out this Star Bunny, whose purpose in the demo was to guide the player underneath this planet. You can follow it right up until the launch star, at which point it explodes into a toad. So originally Star Bunnies could turn into cosmic toads, much like in the final game where some Star Bunnies actually turn into Lumas. Sometime later we reach a planet with a huge Pokey and his Goomba underlings, and when the player controlling Mario slams face first into one, we get to see an early health meter with 8 health instead of the final 3. Now of course we talked about that change before, so we won't dwell too long on that. It's just interesting to know that this change happened sometime between E3 2006 and 2007. And you probably noticed that this health appears right next to Mario when it gets hit, and even though it never did that in Galaxy, that idea was reused in Super Mario Odyssey years later. From this point on, there are a ton of small changes that you probably have come to expect from early demos like this. One of them that I thought was interesting is the sheer mass of sling stars in here. A lot of them slinging Mario onto a launch star, which doesn't happen nearly as often in the final game. Star bits went through a bunch of small changes too, like how they were originally called star shards in this version, and not only that, there were originally only 100 of them per level, and you couldn't shoot them either since you had a whole bee to grab them. I could never find footage of them all being collected, which kinda sucks because I'm super interested, so we can't exactly be sure what it would have done. But, you know, maybe it would have been like earlier Mario games, like where you collect 100 coins, you got a star. Seems reasonable, but we've got no proof as yet. Ooh, let's not forget early sound effects in this build, especially for Mario. A lot of this demo reused sounds from Super Mario Sunshine, like jumping for instance.
You love it?
Mario burning in fire, though, was definitely not used in Galaxy, and it's not from Sunshine either. And it even comes with the strange boing sound. If you know where it's from, please leave a comment and let me know, though it seems like it may have been recorded specifically as a placeholder for this build. Now, at the end of the demo, the players got to battle with one of 3 bad dudes, depending on which path you took to get there. That's right, there were alternate paths in this demo too. Freaking Nintendo, always pulling out the best in E3. There was Tarantox, whose battle changed in a couple ways. Hitting any of his bumbles will cause him to flip over, but in the final game, only hitting the back one works. And after recovering from that, in the final it will regenerate all of the bumbles, but not so in this build. Next up, we got everyone's favorite boss that got its idea from Shadow of the Colossus, Mega Leg, or as is known in this build, Sniffitbot. First things first, you'll notice that the planet before this boss is a bit more organic than the final, which in that appears more robot-y and much better suited for the battle. But the planet isn't all that changed, so did Sniffit, especially around the head area, which for some reason seems more detailed in the demo compared to the final. I mean, look at it. Look at all those color variations in the panels that just kind of became flat later on. Now, the goal here is to break the first metal cage with a bullet bill, which exposes a second glass cage holding the Grand Star. But that's where the changes start to come in full force. First, in the E3 demo, instead of a Grand Star, the cage houses a red spotlight that was later moved to the top of the cage because who would want to rescue a spotlight? After destroying the first outer cage, another interesting change comes to light, the barriers. See, in the final game, the barriers completely surround the smaller cage, which you then have to destroy to reach the inner cage, and then destroy that with a bullet bill. But that isn't how it worked back at E3. Instead, only a few barriers came up, and those were all indestructible. No matter how many bullet bills you throw at them, they're not going to break. Instead, you originally had to guide the bullet bill around the barriers to reach the inner cage and destroy it. While the final way does take more work, it's definitely easier just to keep destroying barriers until they're all gone, instead of having to try over and over to maneuver around them. So likely, this change was made to lower the difficulty of the battle. Changes King Caliente went through also have the same effect too. I'd argue that the E3 version is a bit more challenging than the final, except for the fact you have 8 health. First, let's recap the boss battle as it was seen in the final game. So the king has a traditional 3-phase battle, where in each you have to hit him with a green coconut. In order to increase the challenge for each phase after the first, the king will begin to deflect that coconut back at you, once in phase 2 and twice in phase 3. The demo, however, completely removes this first phase, and also has the king deflect the coconuts twice in both the second and third phases, or in the demo's case, phase 1 and 2. The fireballs that are thrown out at the final phase also changed a bit, but only in color, with the demo being red and the final being blue. Oh, there's one other thing I should mention about this boss fight. It showcased an unused function of the Wii pointer. See, at this point in Galaxy's development, there was a lot more to the Wii pointer than just being used to pull stars and sling pods and grabbing and shooting star bits. Originally in this battle with King Caliente, you could use it to swipe away incoming attacks, like the fireballs that are spit at Mario. Oh, Mario beat the boss. Guess it's time to collect that power star. This sequence in the final is different, with some green text falling down and bouncing on the screen, compared to the demo with this funky white text squishing down. But that's not all. When collecting the star in this build, instead of it playing the final it plays an orchestrated version of the Super Mario Bros. Flagpole theme. Or Brothers. Some people get upset I say Bros. Super Mario Brothers Flagpole theme. Before E3, there's another conference that doesn't get quite as much love in the Beta64 history. But today, we're gonna change that. We're gonna take a look at the Super Mario Galaxy trailer at GDC 2007, because Nintendo didn't really feel like putting a playable demo at the show. But that's okay, because we've got a lot of differences here too, a lot of which is actually pretty interesting. So first off, Good Egg Galaxy was gonna pull out the pole stars pretty early, having the player required to use them to reach the top of the house, instead of using the pipe in the final. Not to mention, the skybox is different. You know who else the skybox changed? Gusty Garden Galaxy. It's completely different. Honestly, a lot of things in this trailer are super different. Planets like this one were rotated more than 45 degrees, and the Piranha Planet here was originally just a bud. And not only that, the rocks here and the planet itself were redesigned. And heck, don't forget about Top Maniac, who looks completely different. Much like normal Spring Topman, his head would have originally popped up. In fact, he's pretty much just a boss version of a Spring Topman, instead of having that unique boss design in the final game. So now that we've looked through the GDC trailer, it's time for E3 2007. But the thing is, the build that Nintendo showed is almost identical to the final game, so I say Beta Compare Club, check it out there. Instead, let's move right along ahead to Unused Findings. And do you know why? I'll tell you why. Look at the running time right now. We're not even halfway through this video. You thought that maybe we had like 10 minutes left. Now we got like 20 minutes. Every single thing from this point on is going to be unused findings. And I'm not even talking about all of it. These are just the interesting, cool highlights of the things on the cutting room floor. If you want to see it all, head to the cutting room floor. If you're willing to go through this journey for the next 20 minutes with me, grab some popcorn, sit down, and let's enjoy some of the most interesting parts unused in Super Mario Galaxy. And to start us out on this journey, let's begin with Galaxy's internal name, i.e. what the game calls itself. Turns out, according to the main audio res file, it's SMR, likely short for Super Mario Revolution. Revolution obviously being the codename for the Wii at the time. We already know that Galaxy was made incredibly early in the Wii's development, so having Revolution in the internal name does make a lot of sense. And of course, during those early stages, the models for the game were still being modeled, so they had to use placeholders, some of which are still in the final game's files. There are some unused models from Super Mario Sunshine, but even more so from Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, which makes sense since Galaxy and Jungle Beat were made by the same branch at Tokyo EAD. But let's move on from leftovers and on to some more interesting stuff. To do that though, I do need to go over a fundamental idea in game development, not just for Mario Galaxy, but for video games in general. So first, it should be obvious that a game uses the same objects for multiple levels, like rocks or crates or something. So instead of having 500 plus duplicates of that rock, each level will have a list of the objects they want to use from a pool. So when a level is loaded, it will search for each of the objects in the level's list in a master list, which contains the names of every object in the game and the path associated with the models, animation, functionality, etc. Those files, after being loaded, are instantiated around the level with positions set by the level's layout. This is what's known as object-oriented programming. Now, why am I mentioning this? Well, the thing is, not every object that's in these lists is actually being used. Heck, some of them might not even exist anymore in the game's files. That's what we'll be focusing on. First, for a little refresher, remember that to select a level in Mario Galaxy, you first have to walk into a dome, use the pole star, and then you get all these tiny representations of the galaxies you can visit. But there's also one other way to get into a level. For certain smaller galaxies, you reach them via launch stars around the observatory, rather than inside of a dome. However, it looks as if those galaxies may have originally been accessible through a dome, or at least in a similar manner, because as it turns out, 4 of them have those tiny models that would have appeared in those galaxy selection screens. Well, actually, we don't have those models, they don't exist in the game, but we know they were originally there because they're referenced in certain objects lists. They go by the name Mini Belt Conveyor X Galaxy for Sweet Sweet Galaxy, Mini Tamakoro X Level 2 Galaxy for Roly Gizmo Galaxy, Mini Teardrop Galaxy for Drip Drop Galaxy, and Mini Cube Bubble EX Level 2 Galaxy for Bubble Blast Galaxy. There are also 2 more mini model references in that list, but as for the galaxies they represent, we're uncertain. Those are Mini Tri-Leg Level 2 Galaxy and Mini Koopa Jr. Driver Galaxy. But even though we aren't 100% sure what galaxies those represented, we can come to some kind of conclusions based on the name, especially Tri-Leg Level 2 Galaxy. So let's break it down. Turns out the first part, Tri-Leg, is referring to the boss Mega Leg, meaning that this is very likely a boss battle with Mega Leg. But what's interesting about this name is the level 2 part, which probably is level 2. What it seems to be referencing is a scrapped second battle with Megaleg, which is supported from the fact that there's an unused model in the game called Tripod 2 Boss. Though underwhelmingly, this is just a duplicate of the normal Megaleg model with a different file name. Still, with all these 2s being thrown around and never being used, it seems like there was, at least at some point, a planned second battle with our long-nosed metal rival. But enough with those file named maybe plans and unknowns, let's look at some actual tangible unused objects and textures. The first are 2 unused outfits for Mario, which would have likely been used for power-ups. The first was obviously meant to be the Ice Flower, but the other one we're not quite sure. It could have been used for the Ice Flower, or it could have been an entirely different scrap power-up. Or maybe it was just a texture artist scrubbing through the hue slider and thought, good enough for a placeholder. Technically though, these outfits aren't meant for the playable Mario in the game. No, it's actually for a higher poly count model of Mario called Demo Mario, which only has 2 animations in the entire game. This unused model was probably meant to be used for cutscenes, as Nintendo has a habit of calling any cutscene related data demo something or something demo. The playable Mario doesn't have either of these outfits, so they were probably used pretty early on in development. But you know what the playable Mario does have? 3 unused punching attacks. And get this, a full set of tennis moves. Now you might think that maybe these were left over from a previous Mario Tennis game, but no, they're just crappy enough that there is no way they would put this in any retail build of any game ever. I'd hope. Now let's take a look at some bosses, like Megaleg and Top Maniac. For Megaleg, we have some parts that went unused, like scrapped kill switch, unused leg pieces, and an early light that would have been on the top of Megaleg blasting out 3 beams instead of 1. Top Maniac, on the other hand, has an unused model in the game that just so happens to be the same one used at the GDC 2007 trailer we saw earlier. And even the final model has some semi-unused stuff. Basically, you see that gray ring around the boss's weak point? Well, the texture that they use for that isn't completely shown, as most of it isn't mapped to the model and thusly goes unused. It's this giant ground pound me symbol that, if mapped correctly to the model, would have appeared directly on the weak point, but for whatever reason, they scrapped that and made it a simple red color. Remember Boss Crab? Well, neither do I. But it turns out it's an early version of Megaleg that's still in the game's files. It's super blocky and very unfinished, which might make you think that this was just a placeholder, but actually this is what the boss originally intended to look like, at least according to some concept art. It shows the original design for Megaleg, which, I don't know about you, but seems more akin to this early unused model than the final version. There are quite a few early unused models for enemies in Mario Galaxy, like an early Bomb-Omb, a purple Slurpee, and Octopus Queen. There also seems to be some remastered models of Bully and Big Bully from Super Mario 64, which never made an appearance in this game, or any other game since, at least not looking like this. Nintendo redesigned their models in Super Mario 3D World, so this model right here that went unused in Galaxy is the highest quality official model of the original Bully from Mario 64. There are also some completely unique enemies that were completely scrapped from this game, like the adorable Kinopie, who is meant to just hop around. Aww. And the less adorable mountains of unused bugs. You got larva, big larva, small fly, big fly. And yes, those are all their official names. Honestly, these things look more like they belong in Pikmin than Galaxy. In fact, Larva looks incredibly similar to the male sheer grubs from Pikmin. Let's move on from those creepy enemies to just plain scary. Yeah, meet Iceman, a scrap boss in Mario Galaxy. His main form of attack was throwing these balls of ice, which were later reused for Baron Burr. Now, that could mean that Baron Burr was the one that replaced Iceman, but I don't know if there's really a way for us to tell for sure yet. You know, there's like a ton more unused enemies. If we're gonna get through this, we need to go a little bit faster. Speedruns. Everyone loves speedruns. Summoning Salt? Yeah, okay. Let's do that. All right, start the timer. Otajak, an octopus similar to Ota King, otherwise known as King Caliente. It's very shiny and only has 2 animations, waiting and being picked up. Starman, otherwise known as a ball with eyes. There are files associated with it that can change the enemy's looks depending on how damaged it is, so this might not even be its final form. Dragon Head Flower. This big lip beast apparently captures Mario in its mouth and spits him upward, though adding him into the game caused it to crash. In case you're wondering exactly how big it is, here's a size comparison to Mario. Jeez. Uminoko, a spiny creature that was meant to live underwater. It has the amazing ability of looking super freaking cute, and also being adorable. Nitukuri, an iron Goomba. It has all the animations a Goomba would need except being hit by a spin attack, meaning that it was either immune to it, or was created before the spin attack even existed. Mokina, a whale suction cup to the floor that apparently has a penchant for coins and will chase them down. The texture this guy uses is called Torimori 2, which means it must be related to this next enemy, Torimori. Oh. Well, what can I say? It's a thing. It has no animations, but it is rigged for them. Okay, I have no idea what this thing is. Maybe translating the Japanese name will help. Yeah. Okay, so the possibilities are bird lime, which is apparently an adhesive substance that traps birds. But it could also mean meditation, intermeditation, procuration, and facilitating a rendezvous between lovers. I'm gonna guess bird lime. You know, looks like an adhesive substance. It could have trapped Mario. Maybe. Now, while these previous enemies were mostly just flat models with animations, the next one is actually completely functional in the game. Its name is Flame Gun. This statue, despite its appearance, moves like crazy, flopping its ears when it jumps and shoots out invisible fire that can burn Mario to a crisp. But enemies aren't the only thing that went unused in Mario Galaxy. There's some friends too, like Dummy NPC.
This little guy was meant to be your friend, at least until they designed some real NPCs.
What's that? You're saying that everyone watching should join the Beta64 Discord server?
Okay, Dummy NPC. Just for you, I'll put the link up. You're just too cute to say no to.
There's also two more friendlies, and they're both related to each other. First, we got Chico, whose name is exactly the same as Luma's Japanese name, and similar to Luma's internal name. By that I mean Luma's internal name is Tico, which is one possible romanization of the Japanese name Chico. There's also Chico and Tico, among others. So in short, this unused star has the exact same name as Luma's, even though internally they're spelled differently.
There's also another little star buddy, Tico G,
whose name basically translates to Old Man Luma. He looks similar to the Eld star from Mario Party 5 actually. You know, with all these stars being named Lumas, one might think that they were originally the Luma race, before being replaced with these guys. One might think that. And one might also be right, maybe, perhaps. I do want to take a moment to look at some other various unused objects in the game, before we get to the main event, unused planets. Sure, there are a lot of things that are just blocky walls and platforms, but there are a few that hold some interesting info, like this revolving way. It's just technically a big round thing with a hole in it, but what makes it interesting is that the Wii pointer reacts to it. It can't do anything sadly, but it looks like you would have originally been able to rotate it with your Wii pointer. However, much like most of the other Wii pointer functionality, it was removed. So this too was scrapped before anything could even be done with it. Next up, this look familiar to you? It's called a crystal switch and is among many of the other scrapped switches in Galaxy's files. Obviously, it looks more suited for Zelda than a Mario game, but it does have functionality when placed in game. It can be turned on and off by a spin attack and will spin like crazy when it's active. Now, the rest of the switches aren't quite so interesting, except maybe Flag Save Switch, which looks to be similar to a wing cap switch from Mario 64 and might have been used as a checkpoint flag system, much like the flags in Mario Galaxy 2. Speaking of switches, check out this mine with Bowser's face on it. That is a mine and acts like a mine. And next, having nothing to do with that, because I couldn't think of a good transition, we have Tsukidashi-kun Big, which is just supposed to be a bigger version of the final bump. But in a strange turn of events, it's exactly the same size. So you can easily replace the two without anything really changing other than the look.
At this point, you probably thought we were almost done and looked at the runtime. We are not almost done. Let's go! Rapid fire, let's look at some more of these unused objects.
First, we got a top hat meant to be worn by penguins, a genie hand for whatever reason, straight garbage, an early item block, an early rolling ball, an early Koopa shell, an early block, an early music note, an early launch star, a temporary orange slice from Toy Time Galaxy, a prototype manta ray, which is literally just a surfboard, a prototype of the robotic turtle from Dreadnought Galaxy, a prototype Wii remote.
Oh, that's actually pretty interesting.
So this is RVCon, with RV obviously standing for Revolution. What makes this so interesting is that there's an additional button right here next to the power button. Now, after looking at some of the original patents for the Wii Remote, the closest one I could find to this model in Galaxy is this one. It's still a bit different though, as the model has the buttons as the same size, but it does go to show you just how early of a model this is, and how Galaxy was definitely being developed right alongside the Wii. Now, speaking of the Wii Remote, we've got another unused model in here called Magical Wand, which is just an earlier version of another scrap model called Star Wand. It's basically just a wand with a star in it, but what makes it interesting is a possibly related file called Star Wand Cursor. Now, you know that when you point your Wii Remote at the screen, a cursor appears in the shape of a star. Now, this could be a bit of a stretch, but perhaps there was originally some lore behind this Wii cursor functionality in the game. You know how in Epic Mickey they explained the Wii pointer functionality away by claiming the Wii Remote is a paintbrush? Perhaps Mario Galaxy would have done the same thing and called the Wii Remote a Star Wand. It might be a bit much to claim after just a file name, but honestly, it kind of sounds plausible. And finally, to round out our unused models and objects from various places, I have 4 very interesting unused findings in Mario Galaxy. The first is a person by the name of Bill Border. I kid you not, that's his name, Bill Border. This character is made up entirely of billboards, otherwise known as textures that always face the screen. This little Bill that could has 50 animations, running, jumping, punching, you name it, he does it. And he's also got 2 pets, Bill Bird and Bill Dog, and together they make up the unused Bill family. We've also got Kinoko, an early super mushroom. But what makes it so interesting is that removing this file from the game will cause the entire game to crash on boot, because it's loaded right when the game starts up. And the same thing happens in Galaxy 2. Now, what's so important about this unused mushroom that both games rely on it so heavily? Well, the answer likely comes from an Iwata Asks interview, in which it was mentioned that in an early prototype of the game, a mushroom was the playable character instead of Mario in order to test things easier. This would explain why the game would crash. They did what my dear CS professor calls a duct tape fix. They built off of this prototype, and even after replacing the mushroom with Mario, they didn't remove the code that loaded the mushroom and utilized it. So instead of looking through all the code, finding the places it's used, and cleaning it all up so the game doesn't rely on this file, they were instead like, it would take less time just to leave it here than trying to remove it. And since it doesn't take up much space and wouldn't save much loading time, let's just sweep it under the rug, pretend it wasn't even there. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a completely valid thing to do, especially on a time crunch, but let's be honest, should Mario Galaxy really rely on this unused mushroom to run the game? Probably not. For this next unused model, think about Shadow the Hedgehog.
I know it hurts from the sheer amount of edge involved, but for the sake of this model, we're just gonna have to bear with it for now.
Do you remember that one level with the 2-legged machine that you could use to run and jump? Well, that's very similar to this unused model in Galaxy called 2-Leg Walker. See, to use it, you put Mario on the top, and then he can run around like crazy. At least he could have, if it wasn't scrapped so early that they didn't even bother texturing it. But that's not all. We've also got 2-wheeled tank that Mario would have been able to ride in. It's even got a little Mario logo on it, which is super cute, but apparently not cute enough to keep it from being scrapped and forever unused within the files of Super Mario Galaxy.
It's been a long road, hasn't it? We've looked at so many things. Unused objects, unused enemies, unused friendlies. But now we're saving the best for last, unused planets. And to start us off, let's look at some that we've already technically seen before. It's stuff that we saw in early footage that's still in the files of Super Mario Galaxy.
Let's start with the first planet in Good Egg Galaxy, the one with the house on it. Now, you remember from an early version of the game, specifically the E3 2006 demo, the house in that had a very different design compared to the final version. And it turns out that that house and the planet it's on is still in the game's files as Disc Flower Planet.
It lines up pretty well with the original planet, making it a pretty easy substitute.
Of course, though, this isn't technically the first planet in Good Egg Galaxy. That honor goes to this planet, which, as you may have guessed, is still in Galaxy's files under the name Home Planet. Sadly, the model's all that's left, so the toads, music notes, and bells aren't here. But now you can at least get a real up-close and personal look at this infamous planet. The original Peanut Planet from the same demo is here as well, and yes, it is officially called Peanut Planet. But at this point, I'm sure you want to see something that you haven't seen before in early footage.
How about Boss Bazooka Tower?
The early counterpart of the final planet in Toy Time Galaxy. Now, while the final planet is made to look like it's made out of cake and gumballs, This one is strictly business with its cold metal floor, making it fit more with the rest of the galaxy.
That was pretty interesting. But you know what's even more interesting? Planets that never made it into the final game.
Now prepare to have your mind blown with Bathtub Planet. It's a bathtub in a planet.
In its defense though, the water is so hot that it literally burns Mario to death. Sounds like my freaking apartment shower!
Or what about Star Planet? It's a star. That's a planet.
I know that planet was kind of lackluster, but it leads us to the most interesting unused planet in all of Super Mario Galaxy history. Granted, I wasn't on the message boards at the time when it first came out, but here's the thing. When I think of unused planets in Super Mario Galaxy, my first thought, Starman Fort.
Now, all of this info comes from Prima Games' Collector's Edition Guide for Super Mario Galaxy, in which 6 pages of it are concept art and development info straight from the devs themselves. There's a lot of interesting info in here, like how Rosalina was originally intended to be related to Princess Peach, that there would have been a planet intended to have a light and dark castle depending on which side you were on, and there was also this, labeled simply as Fortress. According to the side text, the fortress was designed at the very beginning of development and was rebuilt repeatedly. They even thought it all the way through and had a spot on the other side to excavate natural resources. This was a thriving planet. And hey, look, it's our early boss crab friend. But boss crab isn't the only thing. It turns out this piece of concept art has even more pieces that are still in the files of Super Mario Galaxy, though unused. First up, there's boss crab, obviously. Then there's Star Planet, which goes in the upper right.
And then there's Dis Planet, which is just Dis with huge trees on top.
And then there's Starman Fort, which is all this. It's not exactly the same as this original concept art, but it just means that it went through some redesigns as development went on. Some interesting facts about this planet include the pipes, which have its interiors fully modeled for Mario to go through. It also has this yellow area with a lightning bolt that appears on other unused objects, like the charge spot. But this isn't the only Starman Fort model that we have. No. We also have its blockout, which in game development means the most primitive version of a level, usually done at the very beginning of a level's creation, in order to determine things like size and scale. Its name is Neo Starman Fort, and it's definitely closer to the original concept art, so we can safely assume that this is one of the first level models ever created for Super Mario Galaxy. Isn't that amazing? This is one of the first models ever made for Super Mario Galaxy, and it survived. It's still here. What an incredible piece of history. Freak, that's cool. Freak.
Thank you all for watching, and before I go, I've got some thanks that I really want to give. Messino, thank you so much for letting me use your Let's Play footage as the background gameplay. Scott, you freaking rule. You went over and beyond for this collaboration. Ziella, I can't thank you enough for getting all those unused planets back in the game. And of course, patrons, thank you so much for your continued support. You are the best. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.